Take one. Last Sunday was the last Sunday of the church year, and the lessons leading up through those last several weeks are all end-time sort of texts. And really, as we've heard over the last several Sundays, we in the church need to take great care because we know that there is a certain level of dissatisfaction on the outside. It's where there are those that are outside of the church really see the church as being irrelevant, that it really doesn't matter much for society and culture today. But what can even be more crippling is we also are seeing that there is a distraction from within. That there are those within the church that are there, and it's sort of like a wound that is festering. And it just brings such ill will that it needs to be dealt with instead of brushed over. Because what we find out is that there are those not only on the outside but from within that voice very openly and very arrogantly about their ideas. And so often, especially within the church, their ideas are very sinful. And it really doesn't make a difference that I'm going to live this way, and you know what? If God is a God of grace, He's going to love me. Well, as Jude addresses that in his letter, we hear him addressing those same types of people, especially in verse 16. These are grumblers, malcontents, following their own sinful desires. They are loudmouth boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. And he's talking about people inside the church. How does that happen? Now, I'd ask for a show of hands, but I can't see any of you. But how many of us would want boasters and grumblers and malcontents within our congregation? And the thing is, how do they ever get to be to that point? Well, what happened in Jude's time also happens in our time in the church today. That these sorts of people creep in unnoticed. You know, they come in, they seem to want to be there, and they start developing relationships and friendships with the people. And so they basically, as they warm up to you, you don't realize where they're exactly at. And somehow they get carried along and infiltrate through the connections of relationship until finally there's a creation of a disruption where it seems to blow up and causes such harm within the life of that community. Because they take on various disguises. They somehow disguise their sin with this pleasant personality and smile on their face. In fact, they create a web of deception where what they say and what they speak and what they do seems quite plausible. In fact, they can be very persuasive. But then they set themselves up against others. And they create a contagion of scoffing, as if almost to create some division and some distance. And then, if it's not properly dealt with, that church could very well end up ceasing to exist. But what happens in many cases is that we confront those issues, first of all, after they've already blown up. But we try to do it on our own willpower of reason and desire. Because we know where we stand, and we know we're right, so they're going to just have to come along. And sometimes, especially a German Lutheran can be pretty obstinate with their opinion. I know, I am one. And so, as we are obstinate, we don't want to budge at all. And it's my way or the highway. And so what we end up doing is we develop a mindset, we develop a personality, we develop a way to address the situation we're armed and armored, we're locked and loaded, and we're ready to retaliate with a harsh rebuke. But what we end up doing is we end up compromising the gospel. Because instead of being people of reconciliation to draw people back to God, to draw people back into that fellowship and that community, we end up pushing them further and further away. And not only do we do that, but just within our own community, we create and cause disorder, because there are going to be some in the midst that are going to have friendship on both sides, and they won't know which friend to trust or which side to go with. And so we create some wavering doubt in their mind. And then there are those that turn tolerant in the situation. Well, it's just so-and-so being so-and-so. And you know what? If we just let it go, it'll go away, which it never does. Because what happens when you let an infection continue on, it always gets worse. And finally, the infection corrupts, it spreads, and if it's not taken care of, it kills. That's the first take. Next, take two.